Welcome on in to the Utah Blockcast. I'm Steve Paul, Utah Insider, KSL Sports. Good to be with you on Friday, December 5th. Dropped a podcast episode earlier today. A little progress report on Utah basketball and Alex Jensen with my guy, Andrew Crowley. If you missed that, go back, listen to it, watch it on YouTube. Had a great conversation with Andrew about Utah basketball through 9 games this season and just had a lot of fun. But obviously, with it being Friday, December 5th, it's a pretty big day in Utah football, in the world of Utah football, I should say. This is a big one, and uh, Kyle Whittingham, the man, the legend, the architect behind uh, 2 decades of Utah football, has a choice to make today, December 5th. And so this isn't just another day on the calendar. It's a deadline of sorts for Utah football that could potentially impact it. I shouldn't say could potentially, but we'll have impact on the future of Utah football. So on today's episode, I want to go in depth and unpack what Kyle Whittingham might be feeling, might be going through, might be weighing in his consideration of retirement. Right? We know that Kyle is getting close to the end. We know he's in the twilight of his career. But man, you have a 10-2 season. You're feeling good about what you potentially bring back in 2026. It's tough to say goodbye. It's tough to walk away from winning, and I think that's what Kyle Whittingham got back to this season. So a pretty interesting situation. So what I want to do today, like I said, I want to unpack things. Want to make a case as to why Kyle might retire, why he might return and come back, and just kind of go in depth and talk about this decision. I haven't talked about it all week. It's been a crazy week to say the least, but I figured wouldn't be the Utah Blockcast, wouldn't be the podcast for Utah fans if we didn't dive in deep on this situation. So let's go ahead. Let's get to it with Kyle Whittingham's impending decision here. And to start, I want to go back to his post-game press conference after the Kansas game. That was the last opportunity that we had to, as media members, to talk to Kyle, to hear from Kyle, and get some thoughts on what was coming, what was on the horizon. And he shared some interesting things that I thought shed some light into how he's feeling. He obviously is fully aware that he has to make a decision today, and he let it be known that he knows everybody is aware and knows what's out there. Speaking to the December 5th decision that he needs to make today. He also said he wanted to take time to decompress and reflect on what he accomplished this season, where he's at in his career. And then too, I think maybe one of the more interesting things he said was, he said, "I'm having a heck of a time coaching this team. It's been a fun year and not quite over yet." And I think that's something that Kyle is really, considering here, is really holding on to. So again, I think, he hit all the bases, in his post-game press conference. Obviously, we know that he spent time spread eagle over the last week or so, maybe a little bit more than he has in previous years. But I think we're to the point where, Kyle is taking his time and he's considering a lot of different things. So I think first and foremost, when you're talking about Kyle Whittingham potentially retiring, I think you have to start with what he did this season, as head coach and getting Utah back to a good place. Right, we go back to last year, Utah coming off a 5-7 record, or 5-7 season. It was a very tumultuous year for Utah football. Those in the program, players, coaches, fan base. 2024 was an absolute meat grinder of a season. It was difficult. It was not fun. And um, Kyle has said it time and time again, going back to last year. Leaving on that sour of a note would never have sat well with him. He made it his point that he wanted to return to get the ship righted and to get Utah in a much better situation. And here we are now, as of December 5th, Utah fresh off a 10-2 season, currently ranked number 15th in the country, waiting their bowl destination, officially announcing, their bowl destination. I think we're all of agreement that we'll probably see Utah in the Vegas Bowl. But beyond that, um, he has clearly um, got Utah back where it needs to be at the top of the Big 12, contending for a Big 12 title. And obviously, Utah wasn't able to get to the title game this year, but it's clear that he accomplished what he set out to do last year, was getting Utah back to where it is now, right? Top 25 in the country, one of the best programs in the country, offensively, defensively. He deserves a lot of credit for that. And I think to start there, right, as a reason why in sort of making the case for retirement, right? Like that's what we're going to be diving into, making the case for retirement, making the case for returning, and all of those things that will contribute to his decision making process. Um, so I think to start there, accomplishing what they did this season is going to could lead to either direction. Um, it could lead to him feeling good about what he accomplished and lead to his decision to retire, right? He's it could also lead to him wanting a little bit more. He got to 10-2 this year, and with a little bit more on the roster, obviously they're going to have to replace some guys at certain positions. But you feel really good, really optimistic about the 2026 outlet or outlook, I should say. Sorry. So, um, yeah, let's dive into this. So, to start, making the case for retirement. Kyle Whittingham's legacy is fully secure, right? We know that he is the man of Utah football. He is synonymous with Utah football. He is the face of it. He has been the architect that has built it to what it is today. He is the man largely responsible for where Utah is uh, in 2025. And his success has led to a drastic evolution, up on campus at the University of Utah. You go back to 2005 and what campus looked like then, and you compare it to what it is now. It's unrecognizable, and a lot of that is due in large part to the success of the football program, with what Kyle was able to do leading the program through that transition from the Mountain West Conference into the Pac-12, scaling the mountain of, a fresh new program on the scene, looking to punch above its weight, coming from the lower level, to then scaling the mountain and getting to the Pac-12 title game 4 out of 5 years between 2018 and 2022, and winning 2 of those championship games. That is his hallmark. That is his legacy, is getting Utah to the pinnacle in a power conference and doing it his way, right? Um, that's what he's going to be recognized for above all else. Obviously, the Sugar Bowl victory, leading the team in the Fiesta Bowl, those are things that absolutely are at the top of the list as well. But his hallmark is going to be making that transition and getting Utah to the top of the mountain in a power conference. And so, to start there, right? That's what he did as the head coach of Utah football. Got it, turned it into a championship contender at the power conference level, raising the notoriety and recognition and brand awareness of Utah football. Uh, a lot of that is due to Kyle and the success that the football program has had, going from a Mountain West conference team to the power level conference, and then, gaining the national recognition that it has over the last 5 to 10 years for the brand of football that they play. It's really led to a an increase in a number of different things. Support for the program. You see the facilities that have been built over the last 15 years, the new practice facility, the new south end zone. Those are all things that are due to the success of Kyle Whittingham at the helm. And, his success as the head coach, I remember going back to the 2021 and 2022 seasons, Utah contending for the Pac-12 title and getting to the Rose Bowl. I remember President Taylor Randall, Mark Harlan, and Kyle all making comments about the impact that that was going to have on the student body, on student applications, on their ability to be a little bit more selective in who they brought in as students and who they accepted as students. All of those things came as a result of Utah and the exposure that the program provided the university itself. Um, there are plenty of studies that highlight the impact and economical impact of sports programs and football specifically. And Kyle's success at the helm of Utah football has led to a drastic evolution of the University of Utah football campus. And Kyle deserves a lot of credit in that, right? He so those are the types of things that contribute to his legacy. And for him, he can come to terms with what he's been able to accomplish at the helm of Utah football. He's established a DNA and built upon what Ron McBride built and instilled in this program with his Mafu mentality. Kyle took that and ran with it and really ingraining in Utah this family culture, the physicality and toughness and never die attitude. Those are things that are going to be mainstays for Utah. Um, as Morgan Scalley, whenever he does take over, those are going to be things that he carries with him and builds upon moving forward from there. And Utah's winning culture is well established. Whittingham has been as consistent as any coach in college football. He's currently sitting on 177 career wins, all-time leader in Utah football history. I think he's 38th all-time in college football overall in all-time wins. He's just done so much for the program that his legacy, he can feel good about what he accomplished at Utah. Now, other things, the things that are driving a lot of coaches away from the game right now. We've seen it in the Big 12 itself with Chris Kleiman announcing his surprise retirement. It's the emotional toll that the game and how it's evolved with NIL and transfer portal and a lot of the frustrations that these coaches are experiencing. That's something that can lead to Kyle deciding to retire, to walk away, right? He is 66. He's talked about not wanting to be a lifer, but we know that Kyle loves coaching. It's clear as day that he loves coaching, but with NIL, with the transfer portal, poaching and dealing with agents nonstop, trying to renegotiate, that has turned what used to be a job focused on X's and O's and player development and you know those types of things kept on the gridiron and in the film room. It's now become a 365 day a year job where you have to now act as more of a CEO in building relationships to promote your football program and try to gain resources to stay competitive in today's game. And so there's just been a lot of things as the game has changed, and you're seeing a lot of coaches and a lot of athletic directors express their frustrations with what college sports has turned into. And I think that can be a significant driver in Kyle Whittingham's potential decision to walk away from his job as head coach of Utah. So obviously the emotional toll, right? Dealing with the stress and getting away from the stress is going to be a factor for him. Then obviously, the emotional toll. He's been a coach for so long. It's all he's known, and he's got a growing family that expands. It seems where he's got a lot of grandkids now and having the opportunity to spend more time with them, though it may be difficult to come to grips with, it's got to be something that he's considering, and spending more time with his family is certainly something that he'll be weighing. And then another factor in all of this is going to be his contract. And obviously he has the stipulation today and the specifics on what he's required to do. All he has to do is provide written notification of his decision, whether he wants to retire or whether he wants to return. That's all that is required. I do actually, after asking around today, I do not anticipate we will see anything announced on Kyle's decision today. Maybe that changes, but as of a couple conversations today, I do not anticipate we'll see anything announced today. So I know that we've all been waiting pins and needles on everything, but I do not anticipate seeing anything today. So with Kyle's contract, obviously the stipulation is today that he has to notify he has to notify Utah what he's going to do. He's owed, if he continues to coach, he's owed 12.4 million across 26 and 2027. And if he elects to retire, his contract will transition to a role of special assistant to the AD, which will be worth about uh, almost 7 million over the next 2 years. So he's still going to have money. He's still going to be compensated quite well. There are other things in his contract that uh, make it enticing for him to retire as well. But he's going to be compensated regardless of his decision. And obviously, 12.4 million over the next 2 years. That's a lot of money to say goodbye to. And obviously, he'll still have some money, still about 5 to 6 million, whatever it is, whatever the difference is. But that's going to be something that he considers as well. And then the last thing, I think Kyle, um, you know, it is going to be interesting. I know that he's as competitive as they come. And with what he's accomplished at Utah, he deserves the right to go on his terms. And for him, he may be looking at this as an opportunity to go out in the perfect situation and to have the program at 10-2, riding the ship after a tumultuous season in 24 and handing the reins over to Morgan Scalley after a season like this with what could potentially be returning for Utah next year. I think that is going to be something that Kyle Whittingham truly does consider and weigh into this decision. Is this perfect situation scenario? So those are going to be the things that I think he weighs when it comes to retirement. As for returning, making the case for him to return, I think it's obvious. He still loves to coach. I don't think he was just saying those things to say those things. I do genuinely believe he had a great time this year coaching this team. By all accounts, Devin Dampier, the offensive lineman, there were a lot of really positive influences and leaders on this team that I think made this year a lot of fun for him. And to have the success that they had this year with, like I mentioned, um, what could also be coming back for Utah in 2026, it's also exciting to think of coaching this group yet again for another year. And I think that's going to be something that is going to weigh heavily on him. He's enjoyed this season. Obviously, having a lot of success with this group is really beneficial as well. You talk about what could potentially be back next year, and I think above all else, Kyle, if he does elect to return, needs to make sure that he's got Jason Beck and he's got Morgan Scalley on staff and bought into uh, 2026, remaining on staff, right? That's going to be the first and most important thing in his return if he elects to do so. And then once you get past the coordinators, right, then you start looking at the roster. And Devin Dampier, Bird Ficklin, the situation. There's been a lot of talk that you can only pick one, you can't have both. Well, it sounds like things are trending towards both returning in 2026. So you start there at the quarterback position and you get both of those guys back, and you feel really good about what you can add around Dev and Bird and really round out this group. But you have a strong starting point with that quarterback position. You've got other playmakers on both sides of the ball. Wayshawn Parker, J.J. Buchanan, Larry Simmons did a lot down the stretch of the season. Defensively, right? Are you going to be able to bring back Logan Fano? What about Scooby Davis? There are pieces on that side of the ball as well where, you bring back the bulk of this roster. You feel really good about the foundation that's set there. And then you can go into the transfer portal and really do some hunting and really, I should say, some shopping, as Kyle Whittingham would put it and has put it in recent years. And I think that gets to kind of the next point is, if he does come back, what are going to be the NIL resources that he's going to have available to him? And in talking to people, it does sound like things are going really well for Utah on that front. This season has done a lot to kind of captivate the fan base again and the donor base. And I think there are going to be some good things. I think there are good things on the horizon for Utah in terms of, what could um, not what could, but I think there are positive things on the horizon for Utah in regards to NIL and what they should have available for them going into the offseason and the transfer portal. I think they're going to be able to go into the portal and really look for some difference makers. And when you add that to the mix of what you seem like you're going to be bringing back from this year's roster, you feel really good about what that could potentially mean for Utah and their ability to contend in the Big 12 next season. So, I think that's going to be the biggest thing that Kyle Whittingham considers in all of this is what resources he's going to have available to him and ensuring that his staff remains locked in together and running it back in 2026. I think those are going to be the big factors for him in considering a potential return. Now with Morgan Scalley, right? He has the head coach in waiting tag. Now, with that, it's not an automatic thing. It's just that he's labeled the likely successor for Kyle Whittingham. So there would still need to be a bit of a process, but we know that he's going to be the guy. And so, for him, uh, I know that he's competitive as well, and I'm sure he's chomping at the bit to take over and start to make his impact and make his imprint on the program himself. So, what would a transition look like from Kyle Whittingham to Morgan Scalley? I think it would be fairly seamless. At this point, um, if Kyle does elect to retire, I think it would be a great situation for Morgan Scalley to step into. Obviously, talking about what could potentially be back for Utah in 2026 on the roster. I think handing the reins over to Morgan and allowing him to take control of the program at this point would be, again, getting back to the perfect situation. I think it would be just that. Utah's already signed their 2026 recruiting class. They've got those guys locked in. And I think it's important to note that, Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley, recruits are very aware of the situation that Utah is in. Utah hasn't been, they've been very upfront and honest about Kyle's where he's at in his career and Morgan Scalley waiting in the wings. And so recruits are coming into this knowing where Utah is at with everything. This isn't going to blindside, the guys that just signed if Kyle does elect to retire. But you're still going to have those conversations just to make sure everything is all good. But again, Utah has been very forthcoming and upfront about the situation with Morgan Scalley being the head coach in waiting. So it's not going to catch a lot of people by surprise, but you're still going to have to smooth some things over maybe. I'm not trying to say that in sort of a bad light, but just again, having those conversations and reassuring everybody this has been the plan all along. And again, I think that has been a point of emphasis for Utah the last 2 years. I know for sure the last 2 years that's been a major talking point in as Utah has recruited players and brought them into the program. Guys are aware of this transition. So it's not going to catch players by surprise. Beyond the recruiting class, right? You get into player retention. And I think it's important to know that Morgan Scalley has been incredibly important in player relationships. He's been the guy that I think has really kind of spearheaded that effort in maintaining the relationships between coaches and players. He's been that buffer of sorts for the program, where he's been that guy that players go to. So, he's going to have those relationships with players. And getting to the next phase of the offseason is player retention. And that's going to play a piece in all of this as well, is, getting guys back, getting them to commit to 2026. And so regardless of what Kyle decides, I think Utah's in a good situation to retain players because Coach Scalley has been so involved with building those relationships with players that it's not going to be like a completely new head coach, right? So I think that's going to be very, very important. And then, the last little thing here in all of this is, regardless of what Kyle elects to do, um, appreciate what Kyle has accomplished and what he's done for Utah and the University of Utah. This is a generational run that he's been on, 2 decades at the helm of Utah football, and they're still, as consistent as can be, contending for conference championships. He's had a lot of success over the years and has done a lot to make his impact felt, at the University of Utah. So I think there's plenty of things to dive into. But again, this is going to be, this is obviously a big moment in Utah football. And just to wrap this up and to get everything buttoned up here, right? We know that Kyle is going to have to make a decision here. And he's going to have to let Utah know. And again, I think the case for retirement is obviously the legacy is secure. His impact at Utah will be felt for decades to come. Right? He's done a lot for Utah football and the university as a whole. We know that the emotional toll that these head coaches are experiencing, it's real. We just watched Chris Kleiman at Kansas State announce his retirement and his AD go on a rant about NIL and how the game of college athletics has evolved and turned into a really difficult, stressful, and grind for these head coaches. It's not what they signed up for 20 years ago. And certainly for Kyle, that's obviously the case. His contract is going to take care of him, regardless of whether he decides to keep coaching or retire. He's going to have at least 6 million reasons why to feel comfortable with retirement. And then again, with the transition with Morgan Scalley, it's again sort of the perfect transition. What he talked about last year, trying to right the ship, I think he accomplished that this season. And if he does elect to retire, he can feel good about handing the reins over to Morgan Scalley. Now, as for the case of returning as the head man, right? It's clear that he still loves coaching and he loves coaching this team and this group of guys. And I think that a lot of that centers on Devin Dampier and what he's meant to the program this year. The positivity, the confidence, the swagger that he's instilled in the program, think is big for him. To get him back, I think you look at what that would mean for the 2026 roster and the outlook for Utah football next season, and you like what Utah could potentially be bringing back in 26. That also gets to the next little thing here, and that's, adding pieces through the transfer portal. And you're going to have to replace, some key pieces along some key position groups like offensive line and other spots. What's going to be the NIL and the resources that are going to be available to Utah football? It does sound like there's a lot of optimism around Utah's NIL situation currently, and the success that they had this year is the driver for that, very thing. And so I think Utah, it'll be interesting to learn, what sort of resources, Utah is going to have available for them to go into the transfer portal and add some pieces to this roster. And then the unfinished business dynamic for Kyle Whittingham, right? I think he wants to add another conference title to his resume. I think he wants an opportunity to get to the college football playoff. Utah was a handful of plays away from that this season. And with what you potentially are going to have on the roster going into 2026, you can feel pretty confident that, Utah is going to be able to contend again next year. So these are sort of the things that Kyle's going to be weighing. And I think, it's going to be interesting to learn what he decides whenever we do learn when that. I don't think that's going to be today. I don't think we're going to get a Josh Newman special news dump on a Friday evening. I don't think we're going to see anything announced, but we might. And so I'll leave that with you guys. I'll go ahead. I'll put a bow on this one. and all that. But appreciate everybody that has tuned in to the Utah Blockcast this week. It's been a crazy week to say the least, but it's been a lot of fun because you guys tune in, you make it fun, and I appreciate the heck out of all of you guys that do. So for myself and the Utah Blockcast, I'll go ahead and sign off, and